In the neon-soaked city of Dawnreach, a quiet veterinarian opens his loading bay and finds the impossible. A dragon mother, thin and starving, carrying away food not for herself, but for hidden young. In that single moment, a choice of kindness sparks a chain of events that will change the fate of humans and dragons forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The neon rain of Dawnreach fell in thin lines that looked like light learning to breathe. In the back room of his veterinary supply shop, Dr. Leander Moss checked his thermal scanner and rubbed at a smudge on the lens with the edge of his sleeve. The year was late, the cold cycle close, and orders for heat pods stacked taller than the counter. He liked the steady routine of tending to creatures that did not know how to ask for help, and to people who did not always know how to give it. The soft alert chimed. Movement near the loading bay. The scanner flared with a shape that stunned him into stillness. It was not a person. It was large, elegant, and wrong for any animal he knew on record. He routed the camera feed to his wall screen and saw her in the spill of holographic signs. A dragon mother, not a tiny engineered novelty, but a living being of scale and breadth, her hide catching the glow like calm water catching starlight. She was thin. Leander noticed it first in the way her ribs moved and in the way her wings folded with care, as if saving heat. She kept her head low, but her eyes bright, scanning the shadows and the high corners where drones sometimes lingered. The city's patrol arcs swept the alley mouth and moved on. She waited until they passed. Leander set a bowl on the warming pad and filled it with soft protein and mineral broth. He opened the door a hand's width, slid the bowl out, and stepped back with his palms visible. He spoke in an even voice he used for frightened animals. He said she was safe. He said the food was paid for. The dragon mother stepped forward with soundless grace. She lowered her head as if to smell the steam rising from the bowl. Then she did not eat. She gripped the rim with careful teeth and lifted it, balancing the warmth like a promise, and turned to go. "Wait," Leander said without stepping closer. He did not know if she understood the word, but she paused and looked back at him. There was no demand in her gaze, only a question of time and distance. He nodded once. She seemed to nod in return, then moved into the dim, bowl held steady, tail tip drawing a long question mark across the wet ground. After she vanished, Leander stilled the shaking in his hands by counting his breath. He had worked with creatures from the far holds and from the deep caves beneath the city. He had touched scales, fur, chitin, and skin of every texture. But this felt different, like the air itself had decided to test his courage. The next night, he prepared 2 bowls, one protein, one mineral gel that could help repair heat stress. He warmed both and watched the alley feed. She came sooner, traveling along the line where light turned to shadow. A path a careful mind might choose. She lifted both bowls and left again, without eating. A faint tremor in her hind leg made Leander's chest go tight. He understood now. She was taking food to young ones. He spent a long part of the night reading the public research files. Most of the content was fiction, dressed as fact. He filtered down to numbers, air mix, known radiation pockets, and the way certain materials held heat. He thought about a mother choosing hunger so her children might not feel it. On the 3rd evening, he stepped into the alley with slow hands and a warmth lamp. The dragon mother watched from the angle of the roof where rain stuttered. He set 3 bowls on the ground, each with something different, and moved back until the doorframe held him like a quiet promise. She came down the wall in a controlled slide and approached the meal. Then, to his surprise, she lowered her head in a small, deliberate dip. Not submission, not fear. A greeting. Leander whispered thanks as though he were the one receiving the favor. She lifted all 3 bowls as if balancing a delicate tower, then left by the same thin path. That night, Leander launched a micro-drone the size of a moth. He told it to follow at a respectful range and to return if the mother showed distress. The drone sent back a soft map of air currents and quiet corners. It trailed the dragon mother to the silent quarter known as the Old Works, where the first heat plants had once throbbed and then gone quiet when better tech arrived. She vanished into a geothermal station with a rusted gate and a warm heart. The drone hovered, marked the coordinates, and returned. Leander studied the map and rubbed his tired eyes. The cold cycle would bite hard soon. An abandoned station would hold warmth, but not enough for a thin adult and 2 hungry young. He made a list in a neat hand. Food, heat blankets, water basin, soft tools. No sharp edges. He added a final line and underlined twice. Move gently. Listen first. Before he slept, he left 1 more bowl in the alley with a note he knew she could not read. Still, he wrote it, because words were how he set his courage. It said, "I see you. I will help. Bring them through this night." The rain ticked at the windows like small coins. Dawnreach hummed in the distance, a city busy with its own worries. Leander lay awake and watched the dark, and in that space before sleep found him, a calm thought took root. Sometimes a door is a small thing. Sometimes it is the start of a bridge. Morning in the Old Works did not look like morning. The tall stacks stood like tired fingers, and the air held a kind of old warmth, a memory of work now finished. Leander parked his small cargo floater behind a broken wall and checked the straps on the supplies. He had blankets that could hold heat without scorching, a basin made from a soft polymer, gentle scanners, and food that smelled like comfort. The side entrance to the geothermal station had a gap where metal met time. Leander eased through, guiding the floater by hand so it would not scrape and sing. He paused and listened. The station breathed in long, slow drafts, a reminder that the earth beneath Dawnreach still carried fire. He spoke before he moved farther. He said he was the one from the back door. He said he carried food and warmth, and not one piece of harm. A low sound answered, steady and deep. It was not a threat. It was a question and a measure. Leander stepped into the main chamber and stopped. There she was, the Dragon Mother, holding her body in that careful way, guarding the space to her left with a wing half unfurled. Tucked against that wing were 2 young ones, pale-scale and bright-eyed. They watched him with that intense look that young creatures have when they try to put a new thing into a safe box in their minds. "Hello," Leander said, and the word felt honest. He set the floater down and reached for the basin first. He filled it and placed it well within sight of the mother. She watched his hands and not his face. He found that right and proper. Hands tell the truth before mouths do. The braver young one stepped forward first. Leander would later know this one as Sola. The other, Bracken, stayed close to the shelter of the wing and peered around the joint with a cautious tilt of the head. Leander opened the food packs and set them on a low plate. He moved back 3 paces and shifted his weight to show he would not rush. Seraphine, though he did not yet have her name, tapped the floor twice with a foreclaw. The young ones moved to the plate and began to eat, small sounds clicking in their throats between bites. Leander kept still and counted the rhythm of their breathing. When the food was mostly gone, he set down a second portion, richer and warmer, and added a folded blanket near the nest the family had made from pipe insulation and soft scrap. As the young ate, he studied the space. The mother had arranged metal sheets into a curve that captured the rising air and held it. It was clever, even elegant, but the numbers in his head said it would not be enough for the cold peak coming soon. He saw the way frost had crept into the corners. He saw the way the young pressed close to the mother, even when the room felt warm. The mother took one step toward Leander and lowered her head to the height of his chest. She breathed out, not hot, but warm enough to let him feel the patterned pulses. They came like tones made of air. He did not understand them, but he understood the intention. She was telling him she knew the shape of trust and the weight of risk. He spoke as if she might understand his simple words. He said he knew a place, warm and safe, not far. He said it was beneath his shop and that no one would stare there. He said this would be temporary, a bridge over the cold until a better answer could be built. As he spoke, he kept his hands at his sides and his eyes soft. Seraphine moved closer and set her brow against his open palm. The pressure was light, testing. Leander felt the fine tremor under the skin and understood the cost of the last weeks. He did not reach for her. He let the moment stand as its own answer. He spent the next hour preparing the move. He returned to the alley, collected an automated cargo carrier that asked no questions, and guided it back through the quiet lanes. The young ones watched with growing curiosity. When he opened the carrier's soft compartment and spread the heat blankets inside, Sola climbed in first and turned to trill encouragement at Bracken. Bracken followed after a moment, tucking tail around feet and peeking out with bright eyes. The mother stepped in last, her body forming a safe arch over them. The journey through Dawnreach felt like walking across a thin bridge in a wide wind. The patrol drones crossed their path twice, but did not pause. The cargo carrier presented as harmless freight. The old works fell behind, and the glow of the market stretched ahead like a sunrise made of signs. Beneath the shop, Leander had a basement carved when the building was new. He had added panel heaters and a small pool for water therapy, used by large creatures with joint aches. He had never imagined he would welcome a family of dragons into that space. Yet as the mother stepped out onto the soft floor and unfurled her wings to test the width, the room seemed like it had been waiting for a purpose bold enough to fill it. Leander set food out again and then stepped away to let the family claim the room. The young ones explored with the quick, tapping steps of creatures learning the edges of a new map. The mother inspected vents and corners, and the door. She came to stand beside Leander once more. She lowered her head and held it there. He lifted his hand and rested it on the curve of her jaw. Both stood quiet, and the silence felt like a promise signed in careful letters. That night, as the city thinned to a hush, Leander wrote 2 messages. One went to Professor Mina Hallberg at the small institute near the water gardens. The other went to jurist Thomas Arendt, whose classes in colony law he had once audited for the pleasure of understanding how rules could be made gentle. He asked them to come discreetly. He asked them to bring patience. When the messages were sent, he sat on the basement steps and watched the family sleep. Sola's breath rose and fell like a small bellows. Bracken's tail twitched as if chasing dreams. The mother curled around them both with a care that made Leander's throat ache. He thought of the first bowl and the way it had left his doorway in careful teeth. He thought of the old works and the frost in the corners. He thought, too, of morning. Morning would make new work. Morning would ask for courage again. He felt ready to give it. Professor Mina Hallberg arrived before sunrise with a kit that hummed softly and the calm of a person who listened before she named a thing. She spoke in a low voice as Leander led her down the stairs. When she reached the last step and saw the family, she stood very still, then placed her kit on the floor and knelt with her hands open. The mother watched, then dipped her head in that now familiar greeting. Mina smiled like someone bearing witness to a long, bright secret. With slow care and only with the mother's permission shown in clear gestures, Mina gathered samples from shed scales and from water the young had touched. She ran tests that checked structure and story written in tiny codes. The results, read 3 times for certainty, were clear. The dragons were native to Helios 4, not engineered pets, not imports. A people of this world, living deep where heat and time shape their lives. This changes everything, Mina said softly. And also, it changes nothing about what we owe them today. Leander nodded, grateful for her steady way of speaking. They made plans in short steps. Keep the family safe. Keep the room quiet. Ask for help that would help. Decline help that would bring noise. Jurist Thomas Arendt came that evening, carrying a thin stack of legal charts and a satchel with tea. He read the tests and ran a finger along the lines of the colony charter that spoke of sentient life and shared rights. He said there were paths through this, careful paths, but real ones. He warned them that public opinion could be a shield or a storm, and that the first stories told would matter. On Mina's advice, they recorded small, gentle moments with consent. They filmed Bracken sorting blocks by temperature, not by color, showing understanding that did not need words. They filmed Sola tapping at a screen puzzle and pausing, thinking, and changing approach with the kind of persistence that made people lean in. They filmed Seraphine shaping a strip of scrap metal with breath that vibrated the molecules into a new curve. Not hot like fire, but warm like music you could feel on your skin. They did not publish at first. They shared the moments with 3 teachers, 2 healers, and a baker who ran a stall near the water gardens and knew how to read a crowd. The reactions came back in soft waves. Wonder, care, a desire to help. The baker said, "Show them the lullaby." Leander did not know there was a lullaby. Then, one night, he heard it. Sola cut a foreleg on the edge of a vent while racing Bracken from pool to wall. The cut was shallow, but bled bright. Leander moved with calm hands and pressed a pad to the wound. Seraphine stood close, humming in low, patterned tones that flowed through the room like the harmonics held kindness, the way a bowl holds broth. Mina, who had a recorder running for notes, caught the moment by chance. Later, when they listened back, all 3 fell quiet. It was impossible to fear a song like that. They released a short video in the morning, only 30 heartbeats long. It showed a mother attending a child. It showed skill and comfort and the long note of care. It did not show teeth. It did not show wings spread wide. Dawnreach watched, and something softened. Then came the pushback. A mining executive named Gideon Slate held a meeting at the trade hall and spoke in careful phrases about risk and resources. He said that unverified creatures could not halt progress. He did not use the word animals, but the idea hung in the air like cold fog. He called for inspection teams and for custody for safety. The city feeds lit up. Some voices agreed. Many asked for more light, more facts, more music. Leander felt the weight of it pressing down the stairs to the basement. He told Seraphine what he understood of the moment. She listened and then did something he would remember all his days. she picked up the strip of metal she had shaped before and pressed her breath into it with a new pattern. The metal sang, not with sound alone, but with a trembling that wrote meaning on the air. Mina's sensors translated the pattern to a line of symbols. The line said, "We come in care. We ask for care in return." The next gathering was set for the city square under the soft lamps near the water gardens. Tomas said public ground mattered. Mina said clear language mattered. Leander said kindness mattered most. They prepared a simple stand and set the translator on a low table. They invited no crowds, only those who had already shown calm attention. Dawnreach came anyway, but it came in quiet shoes and with open faces. Gideon Slate arrived with 2 associates and a polite smile. He stood at the edge of the circle and waited. Seraphine walked into the square with Sola and Bracken beside her, wings tucked, head level, pace measured. She placed the shaped metal on the table and held her breath steady as the translator woke to the patterns in the air. "We live here," the translated line read. "We learned your heat. We learned your quiet. We learned your noise. We choose to speak." The words were plain, and that made them strong. Gideon Slate asked, "Do you understand trade, boundary, and risk?" Seraphine breathed again, and the translator shaped her answer. "We understand home, food, and children. We will share, if sharing keeps them safe." The square felt different after that. The talk that followed was not about custody. It was about mats and seasons and how to walk without crushing the ground. Tomas guided the voices with a light hand. Mina wrote promises in sentences even a tired mind could hold. Leander watched the young ones, watched the people, and in their bright eyes, he saw doors opening. That night, after the square emptied and the lights dimmed, Leander sat on the basement steps again. He listened to the slow breathing of the sleeping family and thought of circles. There was the circle of the old works, the circle of the square, the circle of trust that had widened from a single bowl to a city. Circles, he decided, were how kindness traveled, not in straight lines, but in rings that kept including more. The Dawnreach Accord did not arrive all at once. It formed the way a calm sea forms from many small ripples. Weeks of meetings shaped it, each one adding a better word, a clearer map, or a softer rule. The Accord named the dragons as native people with full protections. It drew safe zones where the ground needed quiet and set routes where mining could proceed without harm. It promised learning both ways, human tools shared for dragon health and comfort. Dragoncraft and earth sense shared for human safety and art. From the day of the Accord, the city changed in small, beautiful ways. A glide path was added along the high avenues so winged bodies could move without worry. A set of shallow pools appeared in the water gardens for thermal play and practice. In the school near the market, a new class taught harmonic patterns alongside numbers, and the children laughed when they learned to make the air sing. Sola and Bracken grew quickly. Sola liked to take apart broken machines and lay the pieces in careful rows, then build something softer from the same parts. Bracken loved the sound of strings and learned to tune a small instrument with breath so gentle it made the room feel like full sunlight. He stood beside Leander once at a festival booth and bought bread from the baker who had said, "Show them the lullaby." He ate it in silence and then said, soft enough to almost miss, "I was wrong to rush." Leander nodded and said, "We all rushed once. We can walk now." What spread from Dawnreach was more than law. It was habit. People began to greet with a small nod that echoed the first greeting Seraphine had offered. They added a pause before heavy steps, a look before loud work, a question before a decision. The dragons, in turn, learned to trust the hum of the city and to read the color changes on the wall screens that marked safer hours for wide flight. In the market, human children learned to shape small loops of metal with breath, and dragon young learned to fix a stuck latch with a simple twist. The city felt like a garden where every path led to a bench and a good conversation. Years passed, and the basement beneath Leander's shop changed its purpose again. The family no longer needed the room for shelter, but they kept it as a museum of first steps. The original warm bowl sat on a low table, reshaped by Seraphine into a gentle curve that caught light and held it. People came to stand before it and read a small sign that said, "A small kindness is not small when it arrives on time." One evening, a breeze slid through the open doorways, and the city sounded like laughter waiting for a reason. Seraphine joined Leander on the upstairs balcony that overlooked the water gardens. She settled in a way that fit the space, as if it had been designed for her height and her wings. Lights from the glide path moved like slow stars, and the scent of bread drifted up from the night market. "Do you have any regrets?" Seraphine breathed, the translator offering the words in a voice that carried warmth, but not weight. Leander smiled. He said he wished only that he had learned sooner how wide a door kindness could be. Seraphine hummed in agreement. She said she had waited long before that first night at the back door, circling the block and watching the hands at the counter through a window. She had almost turned away. "But you came," Leander answered. "You came, and we learned how to meet in the middle." A calm alert blinked on Leander's wristband. A message from the council. The United Consortium on Earth wished to open formal ties with the Dragon Councils of Helios 4. They wanted to send an envoy. They wanted to trade not just goods, but ways of caring for land and for young. Leander read the message aloud. Seraphine bowed her head in that first greeting once more, the gesture now layered with years of meaning. "We will welcome them," she breathed, "and we will show them the bowl." After the envoy came and left, and after the festival that followed filled the streets with music, shaped by wings and strings, a new plan began to grow. The plan did not look outward in conquest. It looked outward like a person looking for neighbors. It dreamed of joint missions to other worlds, built with 2 sets of strengths and 1 set of promises. The council asked Leander to advise. He laughed softly and said he was a veterinarian who liked quiet rooms and steady routines. They said that was why they needed him. He kept slow hours. He knew how to listen for pain before it became harm. The plan took a name, the Open Doors Initiative. Seraphine wanted a title that sounded like invitation. Leander wanted a title that sounded like work people could carry. The 2 names met in the middle, and the words felt right in every mouth that spoke them. On the morning they announced the initiative, the square filled with faces Leander knew and faces he did not. Children sat on the low steps with instruments on their knees. A soft crew of drones hovered high to share the view with those who could not come. Seraphine spoke first with patterns that the translator shaped into plain language. She thanked those who had kept the early days gentle. She thanked the ones who had changed their minds. She thanked a person who had opened a back door and set a bowl on a warming pad without asking for anything in return. Leander spoke next. He said the future did not belong to the loudest or to the first, but to those who learned to be kind in ordinary hours. He said the city had taught him that safety was not the same as silence, and that courage was often a quiet thing that looked like carrying soup up to a flight of stairs without spilling. As evening softened the sky, The water gardens reflected loops of light made by young ones practicing controlled breath over the pond. Music unspooled across the square. Bread was passed hand to hand. A child stood before the bowl in the museum and read the little sign twice with careful lips. The child turned to a parent and said, "The bowl is small." The parent nodded and said, "And the story is large." Later, on the balcony, Leander and Seraphine watched the glide path lights arc in slow lines. The city no longer felt divided into theirs and ours. It felt like a place where the warmth between had become a kind of weather that everyone could share. Seraphine lifted her head and looked toward the dark edge of sky where new doors might open. "Thank you," she breathed. "Not for the first time and not for the last." Leander answered in the same steady tone he had used on that first night. "And thank you for trusting a stranger with a small kindness that turned into a bridge." The night settled. The bowl on the table held its quiet glow. Somewhere, a young musician found a perfect note, and a young maker fit two parts together and smiled. Dawnreach slept in the open hand of its own future, and the wind moved through the glide path like soft applause. The story, which had started with a mother carrying warmth away so her young might live, did not end. It widened, it invited, it kept opening doors.